Hello, and welcome back to Math Time with the Math King, or Mr. Sinclair. I hope you're all doing well, working hard, keeping up with all of your classwork from your regular classroom teacher. Remember, any videos or links that I post are just extra help for you in math. They're not required, they're just a little something to help you get along the way. If you have any questions on this or any other math work, please just send me a message on Google Classroom and I'll be sure to help you out as best I can. Now today we're going to talk about shapes. And you've been learning about shapes probably since preschool and kindergarten. We're going to get a little bit more detail on shapes now. Shapes aren't only called shapes. We call them plane figures or two-dimensional or 2D. Two-dimensional or plane figures means that they are flat. They're flat. They don't have a special shape to them where we could hold them in our hand. These shapes up here are flat shapes. We're going to talk about solids or three-dimensional figures in a different video. But these are plane figures. That's one of the names of these shapes, plane figures, because they are flat. Now let's take a look, and I bet you know some or all of these plane figures or shapes that I have here on my board. Let's go through them quickly. First, we have a square. Now, what makes a square different from all of the other shapes that we have up here is that on a square, all sides have to be the same shape. They all have to be the same size, All sides of a square have to be the same size, and a square has only 4 sides. So all 4 sides have to be the same. And they have to make square corners. You see, each corner like that has to be square. I can't have something that looks like this. Even though all 4 sides may be the same, the corners are not square. So that would not be a square shape. So the square has 4 sides, all the same length, and all of the corners make square corners, or right angles, as we're going to call them and learn about in the future. Now, next door to it, looks like a square that got stretched out. That's called a rectangle. A rectangle also has 4 sides. A rectangle can only have 4 sides, just like a square. Now, this rectangle, you'll notice, has 2 long sides and 2 short sides. Rectangles don't have to have 2 long sides and 2 short sides, but most of the time when we think about a rectangle, that's what we think of. This square is actually a rectangle too. It's a special type of rectangle. Because a rectangle needs 4 straight lines, 4 sides, all 4 sides making square corners so that our sides are lined up. They go up and down, called parallel lines. These sides go parallel side by side, and the top and bottom go parallel side by side. That's what makes it a rectangle. That's why a square is a rectangle too. 4 sides, 4 square corners, 2 sides that go side to side here, 2 sides that go side by side here, never crossing each other. A square is a rectangle, but not all rectangles are squares. This rectangle is certainly not a square because remember, a square needs all 4 sides that are the same length. Okay? Next we move on. I bet you know this shape. You've learned about this shape since you were younger. This is a triangle. Now I like words like triangle because it's kind of 2 things put together to make a word. We have tri and angle. Now, when we say what's a triangle, we say, oh, it's a 3-sided shape. That's true. A triangle does have 3 sides. But when we look at the word triangle, tri means 3. When we see tri in a word, it usually means 3 of something. Some of us have bicycles. Bi means 2. So a bicycle has 2 wheels. When you were younger, you may have had a tricycle. A tricycle has 3 wheels on it. That's why it's called a tricycle, 3 wheels. A triangle does have 3 sides, but let's look at the word that's in here, angle. What's an angle? An angle is where 2 sides meet each other. Here's an angle right here. Here's an angle right here, and here's an angle right here. 1, 2, 3 angles. There are 3 angles in a triangle. That's why it's called that. It does have 3 sides also. That's important for us to remember. 3. Tri means 3. 3 sides, 3 angles. Look at our square and rectangle. They have angles here too. Remember we talked about square corners. They have to make square corners. Those are the angles. We call them right angles. Right angles make square corners. See, I can make little tiny boxes or squares inside of them. So a square and a rectangle have 4 angles in them. They're actually called quadrilaterals. Quad meaning 4. If you've ever heard of the bikes that people ride sometimes out on trails or in the woods, they're called quads. That's because they have 4 tires on them. Quad meaning 4. Tri meaning 3. Okay? So a triangle has 3 sides and 3 angles. Quadrilaterals have 4 sides and 4 angles. A square is a quadrilateral. All 4 sides are the same length and has 4 square corners or right angles. A rectangle is also a quadrilateral, 4 sides. They don't all have to be the same length. They can be, but they don't have to be. But they also have to have the 4 sides and 4 angles too. And they have to be square corners, right angles. Now let's move down here. I bet we all know what this shape is. That's a circle, of course. Now, the interesting thing about a circle doesn't have any sides or any angles. A circle is round. So there are no sides and angles on a circle. Finally, the last one I have here, and there are many more shapes that you could find. We'll be talking about one other shape in my next video that's not going to be listed on here. This is a 6-sided shape. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. My artwork's not too thrilling. You'll have to bear with me. Now the number 6, S-I-X, has a letter in it that's a letter we don't use a lot when we spell. And that's an X. We use S's a lot and I's a lot, but we don't use X very often. I remind kids of that because there's an X in the name of this 6-sided figure, and maybe that will help you to remember it. It's called a hexagon. Hex has an X, just like 6 has an X. So if you can remember the X in 6 and the X in hex, hexagon is a 6-sided figure. Now, we could, of course, have other sides. We don't have a 5-sided figure on here, or an 8-sided figure, or a 10-sided figure. Any number we have has a name. These are the 5 we're going to worry about right now. On the next part of my video, we're going to take a little field trip out into my neighborhood. I'm going to walk around my neighborhood with the camera on my phone here, and we're going to look for things that make these shapes. So look for things that make squares, rectangles, triangles, circles, and hexagons. Hexagon is going to be the hard one. Hard to find things shaped like hexagons. Keep an eye out for them. When you watch the next video, look for things that I miss. Look for these shapes in my neighborhood that I don't talk about, and maybe you could send them as a message to me on Google Classroom and say, hey, Mr. Sinclair, hey, Math King, you missed that triangle there. You missed a square. Here's where it was. Tell me about it. When we come back in after our walk through the neighborhood, we'll talk a little bit more about these shapes and some others maybe that we didn't talk about yet in that video. All right, so I'll see you back here very soon. Thanks. Bye.